Welcome to State of Minds, presented by Hope Gas and by Greer Industries. Data centers are now being built faster than any other kind of commercial real estate in the world, including the United States. These computer centers are integral to the rapid expansion of technology infrastructure to meet the needs of artificial intelligence. A number of data centers and accompanying microgrids power supplies are being proposed in West Virginia. Governor Morrisey and other state leaders are embracing that investment. The legislature has passed a law that paves the way for these data centers. However, critics question some of the supposed benefits of them and bristle at the fact that the law takes away much of the local decision-making. Here to discuss the issue is Chris Morris, director of the West Virginia Data Economy Office that was established by the 2025 law designed to promote the development of microgrids and data centers. And he took that position in August of 2025. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. What does your office do?
So basically, we were set up, by, as you mentioned, by the law to implement the policies enacted or included in the law. And so we are creating a process. We're hiring staff, but the end goal is to facilitate data center investment in West Virginia in strategic locations that make sense and attract investment from companies that are responsible and abide by the rules and the laws and are going to come in here and do things right.
How many data centers are either in the works or being proposed or even inquiries being made into West Virginia?
So, as you mentioned, I started in August 2025, and at first, that was one of my concerns, was that we would not have interest. And my other concern was that we'd have, 2 or 3 people in a garage with some property that thought they were going to do a project, because these projects are complex and they require a lot of capital. But as word got out amongst the industry that we have some incentives, not financial incentives, but certainly processes that are in place that can help shorten the time frame for development. There's interest, and so right now we have 2 projects that this office is certified, one in Berkeley County, one in Putnam County. And there are a number of other projects that I anticipate will be applying. There are also, honestly, just a lot of companies that are looking at sites and looking for opportunities. But there's, I would say, a tremendous amount of interest.
So there's 2 confirmed, one in Putnam and the other in Berkeley.
Correct.
Right. And then how many are sort of, quote unquote, on the drawing board that you know of?
That I know of? So I'll answer that in a couple of ways. Number one, I think that there are several companies that are looking at more than one site. They're not necessarily wed to just doing one project. So, as far as the companies that I want to work with and attract to West Virginia, I'd say that there's probably 10, 15, 20 sites that are actively, that I know of, being pursued. There are probably a lot more than that.
Why do you think West Virginia is targeted by these companies?
A couple things. I think first of all, they want to go where they're wanted. Everybody wants to be desired, right? And I think the legislation communicated to the industry that we're open to them being here. So I think there's that. I think the governor announced last fall his 50 by 50 power generation goal. We generate between 15 and 16 gigawatts of power as a state right now. The goal is to triple that by 2050. And I think that what I learned as soon as I came in to this office was that power is the number one currency when it comes to bringing a project. It is the most important long pole in the tent that there can be by far. I thought of land. I thought about fiber, water, all these different things, and they are our considerations. But power is the number one driver of these projects, and we have power generation here.
So are most of these companies, we have 2 that are confirmed, and many others are considering, are most of these companies looking to connect to the grid or to generate their own power with microgrids?
So I think, I focused primarily on the high impact data center designation process first, because there were 2 programs created through the law, the HIDC and then the microgrid. I focused on the HIDC designation because most of the interest was focused on grid power. And I think that there's a couple reasons for that. I think that that's what's familiar to the industry. And so that's what they're used to. They're comfortable with coming in and connecting to the grid. They know it's reliable. They have, they can repeat the plan that they've done in other locations. So I think that that there's companies that are coming in and looking at that first. And I think that there are places in West Virginia where we have pockets of power that they're going to go first. And then I think they're naturally starting to shift their focus to microgrid power as well.
Mm-hmm. We were stagnant in this country for a long time in demand for power, and now it's exploding. And PJM which oversees like 13 states of power, including West Virginia. It's the largest power grid in the country, and West Virginia is part of that. And PJM has made statements about being concerned about the availability of electricity to meet the demand. So if these companies, this is a broader question, whether these data centers here and elsewhere in PJM, will there be enough supply to meet the demand as they try to connect to the grid?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think that, you're 100% right that the power generation across the country, I think, only went up 1% or so a year for a long, long time. There wasn't a reason to generate additional power. I think that what I would look at these data centers as, rather than potential drain on that power, is actually an opportunity to help pay for upgrades to the grid that are going to be necessary anyway. As we talk to these companies, and certainly the microgrid is separate, right? They aren't impacting the grid power whatsoever when they use microgrid.
Because they're doing their own power generation.
Right. But for me, looking at the grid-powered projects, these companies come in and they pay for the upgrades to the infrastructure that are required as part of their project. And so a lot of these upgrades would have been necessary anyway. So I actually look at it as an opportunity to help improve our grid infrastructure, and using them as at least a portion of their money to offset the cost of those necessary upgrades anyway.
The Mountain State is full of pioneers once again.
We have one of the most advanced robotic heart surgery programs.
The world's most advanced clean steel facility. 2,000 construction jobs, 800 full-time permanent jobs.
West Virginia is going to end up being a leader, an example to the rest of the U.S.
West Virginia is for hope.
Hope Gas is lighting the way forward for West Virginia. Learn more at wvisforhope.com.
In 1914, the same year the first commercial flight soared and the Panama Canal opened, Greer Industries was born. Herbert and Agnes Greer began in Morgantown, West Virginia, striking the first pick into the limestone formation that would become the backbone of one of the state's great industrial legacies. From the roads we drive on, the buildings we build, and the communities we serve, Greer Industries has been delivering quality for decades. At Greer Industries, we've been improving lives for more than a century.
Longer days, warmer drives, and better deals at Dan Cava GMC. Hit the road in one of our new luxury GMC Acadias. Take your pick from our massive selection. Now up to $5,500 off select new Acadias and 3.9% for 60 months. The great deals continue with our large selection of quality pre-owned vehicles. All this and more at Dan Cava GMC in Bridgeport. Shop the world.
Leading the efforts to build a stronger West Virginia, the High Technology Foundation has a proven plan to strengthen and diversify our state's economy. The I-79 Technology Park's high-capacity infrastructure continues to attract advanced federal operations that are driving economic growth. This keeps our young, educated residents in the state and brings West Virginians home. The High Technology Foundation, building a stronger West Virginia. Learn more today at wvhtf.org.
Welcome back to State of Minds, presented by Hope Gas and by Greer Industries. As demand for electricity is rising, so is the price of electricity. How much more can customers in West Virginia, commercial and residential, expect to pay for electricity in the near and in the long term if these data centers come to West Virginia?
So one of the things that we've done is we recognize that is a major concern. Not just you take data centers out of the equation. Your power bill, that's something everybody looks at, right? And so, we are working with Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee to actually help have them research how these projects can impact bills. It's no one isn't going to sit back and necessarily say, "Oh yeah, Chris Moore said this, so it's true," but your bill it's a simple equation, right? And if the denominator, the number of customers that are sharing the fixed cost grows, the output, the cost actually decreases. And so, one of the reasons we've seen an increase in costs, like where I live in Kanawha County, is because you've seen a decrease in the commercial and large users have left the state. A lot of the chemical plants have left. You've seen coal mines that have left. And so all of a sudden you have fixed costs that are shared amongst a lesser number of people. And so that is part of the factor of driving up our costs. So I'm a firm believer that the more people we have and the more companies we have that come in and share those fixed costs, you can actually see a reduction in power over time.
Wait a minute. You're saying that with the addition of data centers, that electricity rates will go down?
I think that's a very distinct possibility.
I'm going to push you on that because according to Utility Dive, which covers utility-related issues, here's something they said. Unless something changes, PJM consumers will pay an extra $100 billion through 2033 as new data centers continue to exceed availability power supply. By 2028, families in the region will be paying around $70 a month extra on their electricity bills. That's from Utility Dive. And I understand what you're saying is that the more customers and you spread out the cost. However, as demand goes up, then typically if there's not enough supply or limited supply to meet the demand, then the price is going to go up, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's basic economics.
That's the economics.
Right. Again, I think that you have to look at, are the requirements on who pays for the upgrades, right? So if you're passing the upgrades to the infrastructure for the data centers onto the residential users, then certainly their bills are going to go up. If, for instance, the project in Putnam County, which is the Google project, if Google, which is committed to pay for any necessary upgrades to the grid for their project, covers all their costs, I don't see a way for that to actually end up increasing the cost for residential households.
So rates will not go up?
I believe that if the costs associated with the projects are covered for by the project, then yes, I don't think that they will impact bills and increase bills.
One of the consistent...
But I will say this. I will say this.
Okay.
I'm not over the Office of Energy, right? That's a conversation I would have with Nick Preservati at the Office of Energy, or I'd have with, again, one of the reasons we've tied ourselves in with Oak Ridge National Laboratory, because it's not me thinking something isn't good enough.
I understand. I'm not going to hold you to that. You control the rates, but you understand the concern.
Sure, 100%. I don't want to pay a higher bill either.
Yeah. I mean that when if supply is limited and demand is greater, and these data centers use a lot of electricity, then.
But I think you've also seen that we are increasing the supply, right? I think we've seen since the governor announced his energy plan in the fall, a number of at least 5 or 6 new generation plants that are going to be coming online. So you are going to see an increase in the supply as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the consistent complaints that you've heard a lot since you came to the office with the existing law promoting the development of data centers is that the law itself essentially blocks local community input, which is often allowed in other states. So they're not subject to any county zoning rules or development regulations and land use ordinances. Doesn't that seem unfair?
Maybe if you quickly look at it, I can see that argument, but there's a lot of, I think, things that are being overlooked when you simplify it to that. I would start off by saying, number one, 50 of the 55 counties in West Virginia don't have planning or zoning. So this is actually an additional layer. If a data center would have come in prior to 2014 being passed and decided that they wanted to locate in the county, the vast majority of counties wouldn't have had any ability to stop the project in the first place. So there are a number of counties that don't have planning or zoning staff. They don't have big budgets. They don't have big staff. And so, I've reached out and said to those counties, and to any county, frankly, the counties that were approved, Putnam County and Berkeley certainly have staff and they have budgets. But I also believe that I can help assist them to make sure that projects are done well. So I don't just serve as a single point of contact for the industry. I also view my role as a single point of contact for local government, for citizens. I've spent a tremendous amount of time. I talked to a nice young woman in Berkeley County for an hour and some change yesterday on the phone. She just reached out, wrote a letter and had concerns. And I picked up the phone and we talked for an hour about it. And she said, I feel a lot better having talked to you. And so, yes, it's easy to gloss over and say, well, local folks don't have a say. But the truth is, before House Bill 2014, the vast majority of counties didn't have the right to approve or disapprove a project.
Because they didn't have planning or zoning.
Correct.
Right.
So some of the things that we can do to help, and these are things that are in the works, are involving the local folks.
So, and look, you didn't write the law.
Right.
You're implementing the law, so I understand it. And as I watched the panel in Shepherdstown with you on it, what struck me was you seemed, and you talked about your phone conversation yesterday, very willing to be that conduit to the community. So, and maybe you didn't expect that when you took the job. So how seriously do you take that responsibility of like, okay, the local folks are concerned, I got to be the point guy in helping them understand what's going on, especially if the company is going to be, as companies sometimes are, kind of closed mouth about things. Yeah. So are you embracing that role?
100%. I think you'll see in the coming next couple of weeks a couple of things that will demonstrate that. Number one, our office is getting ready to issue an RFI, request for information from counties, from county commissions, municipalities, the development authorities, and we want for them to provide us potential sites that would make sense for data centers. And we ask for the acreage. It's a simple 1.5-page form, but a key component of that RFI is there local support for a project at that site? Because I can tell you, as much as you hear the pushback, there are also a lot of counties and a lot of legislators and county commissioners calling and saying, we want investment in our communities. We have sites. And so for me, as industry comes in and they say, hey, do you have sites? I would love to be able to say, we have a bunch of sites for you to look at. And oh, by the way, here's a list of sites that a county commission or a development authority has passed a resolution saying, we want a data center at this site. Because again, these companies want to come in and they want to invest in the community and be a part of the community. So that's one thing we're doing.
Let me follow up on that and I'll let you finish it. Is that so, do you have enough juice in your office to say to a company that's interested in coming to West Virginia with a data center, and they say, we looked at this county, and you can say to them, look, I'm just going to tell you, I'm from West Virginia, and I know this community, and you're going to get a lot of guff.
Yeah.
But if you go here, they're going to embrace it. And A, can you and would you do that? And B, will that make a difference with a particular company?
Yes. First of all, yes. 100%. I'm committed to doing that. And I think that I wouldn't say I have juice, but what I would say is that the companies that we're working to attract, there are, in any industry, there are companies you want to attract and there's companies you probably don't want to attract into your state, into your communities. We're working to be selective in who comes here. And I take it very seriously. Our due diligence on reviewing applications is as thorough as I can put in place under the rules and the law. And so, but what I'll tell you is the companies that we want to attract, they want to know. That's one of the questions. Do? Yeah, that's one of the questions they ask. How are we going to be received? What are the needs of the community? And so one of the examples I gave, I noticed that Jefferson County Commission, one of the things they did was they created an ambulance fund. And they said, if we get a data center, we're putting money in an ambulance fund because we want to be able to, that's a need that they have. And so, these companies want to know where they will be accepted and embraced, hopefully, and what are their needs and what can we do to come in and help. I had one of the hyperscale facilities really are catered to a handful of companies. There aren't a lot of companies that can come in and really buy that amount of power. And so, and have capital and the wherewithal to do these complex projects. But after the 60 Minutes special on the Gary water system, I had a company say, we're looking at a project in southern West Virginia. Can you give me an estimate for the cost of fixing that system? I said, sure. So I reached out, I talked to the folks in McDowell County, and they gave me an estimate. They said it's about $13 million to fix our system. They said, if we end up coming to West Virginia, that's what we want to do. We want to help fix that, pay to fix that system. Those are the kind of companies that we want to locate in West Virginia.
But you would not be able to say no.
We can say.
You can say no.
Yes. So if it's okay, I'll tell you a little bit about the process of how we review. So, and this is all based on the House Bill 2014 and then the legislative rule that passed this last session in March of 2026. So a project comes in, they identify that they want to do a project in West Virginia, and they have some due diligence they have to do. But for them to apply, they have to have control of the site, options on it or whatever. They own the site. They have to qualify, meaning that the project anticipates that they're going to have at least 90 megawatts of critical IT load. And those are the two really biggest things to actually kind of start the process. But the things that we look at are numerous. So we look at, okay, do you have power to the site? Because again, that's the real driving factor to success is what is your plan to power? Have you engaged if it's grid power, where are you in the load study process? Do you have positive feedback from the utility? What's the timeliness of that power? Then we start looking at other resources. What's your water usage plan? And so we also look at the proximity of the site to schools, churches, residents, national historic landmarks. And if they're in proximity to any of those things, then they have to have a plan for mitigating any local pushback or concern. And so we look at all kinds of things. And then at the end, I'm an advisor. I review all this stuff. Once an application is complete, and most of them come in and I say, this isn't enough information, I need more information. But once I say, okay, you've given us enough information, the Secretary of Commerce has 14 days to then review that information and decide whether or not they get their designation or not. And it's based on, I believe in the law says, is it reasonable or unreasonable to grant this designation? And so there is the ability for us to actually go in and say, look, do they have the wherewithal? Does this company really have the capital to do this? Do they have the track record? That's one of the things that I think to me is the most important thing. Have you done this before? And have you done it somewhere successfully? As part of my due diligence with the two projects that were approved, that's what I really relied on is I want to talk to, local leaders in areas where they've been and said, have they done things right?
And those two have met that standard.
Correct.
West Virginia has mountains of potential.
I grew up in the Kanawha Valley. It's a privilege to be a West Virginian. What we've got to continue to drive in this state is that concept of hope for the future, moving not just West Virginia forward, but moving the nation forward.
West Virginia is for hope.
Hope Gas is lighting the way forward for West Virginia. Learn more at wvisforhope.com.
I'm Sean Kovich, Mountaineer Golf Coach. When disaster strikes your home, business, or golf game, call the restoration company the Mountaineers call. Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
In 1914, the same year the first commercial flight soared and the Panama Canal opened, Greer Industries was born. Herbert and Agnes Greer began in Morgantown, West Virginia, striking the first pick into the limestone formation that would become the backbone of one of the state's great industrial legacies. From the roads we drive on, the buildings we build, and the communities we serve, Greer Industries has been delivering quality for decades. At Greer Industries, we've been improving lives for more than a century.
You own a boat because you love spending time on the water. Choose the outboard that allows you to make the most of it. Honda Marine's legendary reliability, ease of maintenance, and powerful performance keep you going strong. And they're all backed by the peace of mind protection of the industry's best limited warranty. Visit your Honda Marine dealer today and find out why it's more than an engine. It's your time on the water.
Welcome back to State of Minds, presented by Hope Gas and by Greer Industries. Let's talk about one that's maybe one of the most controversial ones. That's the Tucker County one.
Sure.
That you're very familiar with. The proposed data center and natural gas power generation unit in Tucker County is very controversial, as you know. There's considerable local opposition to the plans by the company Fundamental Data, with residents saying they've been kept in the dark about specifics about water use, potential air pollution, while the company promises thousands of construction jobs and 500 permanent jobs. So they have promised some economic impact there. Has Fundamental been as forthcoming as you would hope about that project?
So what I'll tell you is I reached out. That was a project that was in the works prior to
you coming on.
Right. And so one of the first things I did was reach out to them in August of 2025. We have not had, I'll say this, I've had more conversations probably with Tucker United than I have with Fundamental Data.
Which is a citizens group opposed to, or raising concerns and or opposed to Fundamental. Okay.
I will point out that I don't have an application for a microgrid or a HIDC designation submitted for that project.
High impact development.
Data center, correct. I don't have an application for either of this. So with regard to their actual project, I have very limited firsthand knowledge. But I would say that, yes, I would encourage them. And in fact, we've had conversations over the last week or two where between the Office of Energy and the Data Economy Office, we want to have a much better understanding of their project.
Would you share some of what you've suggested to them or share some context about this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to learn about it. And I think that it's important for every project to know the process. You know, once you are aware, if you're a microgrid project, that you're going to, there's certain things you have to do, and you have to try to negotiate power. You have 90 days to do certain things. You have to, by law, apply for this designation. And so my message is to all projects, if you have a data center or a microgrid project that you're contemplating, it's important that they have familiarity with the law and they begin the process with the Department of Commerce and allow us to help facilitate conversations, because that's part of what we look at. What we look at is the reasonableness of a project, and that takes into account a lot of things. So I have not had the opportunity yet, although I have plans to go and look at the site. I've tried to have an open mind for all projects and go into it and really be non-biased either for or against a project. And so certainly I've heard, seen the reports on Metro News and everywhere else about concerns about the project. I want to go and see firsthand what their plan is, and then encourage them to apply.
And when I watched that panel in Shepherdstown, you were, props to you for being on the panel. It was a very civil discussion, and a representative from Tucker United was there. So I compliment everybody who participated in that panel, including you. One of the things that I think puts you in an unusual position is, like, the state DEP has already approved air quality permits for the Tucker County power plant and data center. Isn't that the cart before the horse? I mean, shouldn't it come to you? Shouldn't it come to your office and deal with the fundamentals that you've talked about, and then you can your office can make a judgment and advise about it before they go through the permitting process?
I think that the beginning, when you're implementing a new law, things are a little bit messy for the first year or two. And so that project was started prior to the passage of this law. And I believe, I don't know this to be a fact, but I believe they applied for that. I know they applied for their permits at DEP before I started working. The office was created and it went into effect July 1st of 2025. And so, yes, I think that the proper process is that if you're a microgrid or a data center or both, you start with the Department of Commerce. We review, we provide our approval, and then you go through the permitting processes through DEP, through the State Fire Marshal. And this is an important point. The HIDC designation is not the end of a project or the end of a process of review. It's the very beginning. So it's conceptually, this is a project. Okay, let's look at the applicant. Are they credible? Do they have funds? Do they have access to capital? Have they done this before? Okay, let's look at the site. All right, does the site make sense? And so we review all these different aspects of it, and then once the Secretary of Commerce provides that designation, then the way I see the process unfolding is you get your DEP permits, you work through the Army Corps of Engineers if you need a wetlands permit, or if you obviously have to interface with highways most likely, and the State Fire Marshal Office and SHPO, and so yes, the way I believe the legislative intent is to start with commerce, and then I think it makes sense, because if there's a project, and I'm not making a commentary about any specific project, but if there's a project that comes and gets their air permit and goes through this process, and we may or may not, it doesn't change my impact or opinion on whether that project should get their designation. To me, that's immaterial.
But going forward, it should come to you first.
It should come to us first.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, and you've talked with the people of Tucker County a lot, and you're a West Virginian, you know Tucker County is a big tourism area, et cetera. Would you have said to Fundamental, look, you're going to have a lot of opposition. The folks in McDowell County want you. The folks in Tucker County don't. You want to go to, why don't you go to McDowell County?
If anybody would have asked me, I would have said, and again, there potentially could be a site in Tucker County that makes sense. I don't know. That's what I want to go see. But I would have, if someone just said to me, would you locate a project in Tucker County or an area that's maybe like in Weirton, where there's been industrial historical developments, I would probably start with an area where there's been historical industrial investment as opposed to a tourist area. I think that yes, it goes to the whole idea of the RFI I mentioned earlier, which is we want to help locate projects where they're desired and where they make sense. And so, yes, I would probably start in areas that I think that where I know, again, as you said, I grew up an hour from Canadian Valley. I would have anticipated that there would be some pushback.
What do you think are the economic benefits of a data center?
So, I mean, there's no question that they generate a lot of revenue. They generate a lot of revenue, and that there are jobs. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Google facility in Putnam County is going to employ the same number of Nucor. I mean, no one's claiming that, right? But the jobs that they have, a few hundred, 300-400 jobs, average pay of $100,000 a year. The state's not putting any money into that. The county's not being asked to put any money into that. They're committing to pay for the upgrades to the infrastructure. So from my perspective, that's a very positive thing. I've talked to some of the hyperscale folks that have developed large data center campuses in other states where they'll have 2,000 electricians on site at a time for an extended period of time. That's a tremendous economic impact to that entire region. And then you'll see the ecosystems that can build up around it. Other service providers, entities that may manufacture chips or provide electrical service or whatever. You'll see
ancillary businesses you think is locate near the data center?
Yes, I've seen that. We've seen that in other states, and so. But certainly the major impact is the tax revenue that's generated.
Let's talk about the tax revenue, because the law that's been an issue as well.
Sure.
The law distributes 70% of the property taxes from data centers to the state, only 30% locally. Normally property tax almost entirely, through a roundabout way, stays local, primarily goes to schools, and there's some support for counties and cities, but primarily it supports schools. So why shouldn't counties, and I'll ask you this even though you didn't craft the law,
right?
But shouldn't counties keep more of the money?
So that's, and I have some friends that are county commissioners. I've had some discussions about, the policy behind it. And as you pointed out, I was not there as part of that discussion. And I think it started actually with 0% was going to go to the county. And I certainly would understand why a county commissioner would not support that. So let's talk about how the money's generated, or the money that is distributed. So 50% of the money goes to the personal income tax reduction fund. And so I think the the policy behind that, or the thought behind that, was that this is an opportunity to share some of that benefit with every West Virginian. It's varying degrees, obviously, depending on your income, how much you benefit, but everyone would benefit. So then the next 30% goes to the county where the project's located. 10% goes to all other counties. So for the project in Berkeley County, I'll give you the tax commissioner. I wore that hat, but don't wear it anymore. I called him and said, this is the size of the project in phase 1. Can you give an estimate for the revenue generated with the Berkeley County project? So he gave us estimates for the county commission in phase 1. The county will receive between $10 and $11 million a year for the county commission's use. Because Berkeley County has an excess levy, they will receive between $23 and $24 million a year, every year, for the school system. And so now the rest of that revenue is shared among 10% goes to the other counties, right, based on prorated on your population. Then 5% goes to Water Development Authority for other water development infrastructure projects, and then 5% towards the Electric Stabilization Fund to help decrease electrical residential households to their electric bill going up. So I think that the idea was, let's find a way to help everyone benefit. And, the one thing that I have heard from the companies that I'm working to attract is that it is desirable to have one set of rules for the whole state, especially for a state the size of West Virginia. So if they're going to come in and look at a site, we're in Mon County. They're looking at a site in Mon County, and they're going to go down the road and look in Marion, or they're going to go, over to Marshall or whatever, that they have the ability to say, this is the set of rules statewide that we have to follow. It allows them to really consider options across the state. And so that is, I think, one of the real positives with the bill is that we can have one single set of standards. And that's one thing I did want to mention earlier. Sure. About is our plan is to, and I don't know if I mentioned this, is to create an advisory council. And, I want to include industry. I want to include, folks, representatives from the utilities, academia, environmental advocate, community advocate, local elected officials, a legislator or two, and then have open discussions. And let's talk about, okay, how can we implement these and create policies and involve the public, because these will be public meetings, and create a single set of standards statewide. And one of the things, and again, these are all fair points. I wouldn't say they're criticism, but I think they're fair points, is we don't have a single set of standards. We don't have any guardrails. Well, I've been there for 8-9 months. I want to create some standards, some minimum standards statewide for all data centers that are going to come here. I don't think that it's wise for me to sit back and say, I know what those standards should be. Let's get a bunch of people in the room with differing perspectives and have a conversation about it. Let's allow some public feedback. Let's include everyone in that conversation to develop that standard that is the minimum standard of what we're going to have as we see these develop.
You better do that quickly.
Yeah,
this is happening. This is happening very rapidly.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like.
Well, so the HIDC designation again is the beginning of the process. You won't see construction at either of those two. It would be unlikely before January. So what I will say about both of those projects is that, and one of the first things I did as we received applications. Now, again, the Google project's different because it was started prior to, at least it was in the works. I don't know how much had been done prior to the creation of this office. But they're going through the Planning Commission in Putnam County voluntarily. Here's our plan. Do you have suggestions for improvement? Same thing, we're facilitating conversations and working with the Berkeley County Development Authority and with Penzance, is to say, okay, here's their plan. How could you make this better? And they're open to that feedback. One of the first conversations we had with Berkeley County and the company was, as they looked at the site, as one of the local leaders said, well, you're close to a water treatment facility. We could actually use reclaimed water, gray water, and it'll save the county money. We don't have to clean it to that same standard. You can use it and clean it for us. And they said, yeah, that would be a win for both of us. And so I am old enough and been around long enough to know that when you put the people that are working on the project together, the local folks and the company, and we could sit down and create that discussion, that we can benefit the project. And so, we're going to facilitate those conversations with the projects and with the local folks.
The best thing about West Virginia is West Virginia.
It's family, faith, and integrity.
It's a strong work ethic.
Everyone knows their neighbors. I think we feel closer to nature and we feel closer to each other.
You can achieve anything here.
To be a West Virginian is to be hopeful. We live in a state that has boundless opportunities, and with boundless opportunities come hope.
Hope Gas is lighting the way forward for West Virginia. Learn more at wvsforhope.com.
The 2026 High School Baseball State Championship. 4 classes, 4 champions, 1 unforgettable day. From first pitch to final out, the 2026 West Virginia High School Baseball State Championship, presented by Toyota, Saturday, June 13th. Watch live on Metro News Television, Facebook, and YouTube. Available on mobile, Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, LG TV, and select Samsung Smart TVs.
In 1914, the same year the first commercial flight soared and the Panama Canal opened, Greer Industries was born. Herbert and Agnes Greer began in Morgantown, West Virginia, striking the first pick into the limestone formation that would become the backbone of one of the state's great industrial legacies. From the roads we drive on, the buildings we build, and the communities we serve, Greer Industries has been delivering quality for decades. At Greer Industries, we've been improving lives for more than a century.
Sunshine, open roads, and a new Toyota from Dan Cava Toyota World. Lease an all-new Camry for as low as $398 a month. All-new Tundras now up to $8,000 off. All-new Tacomas now up to $4,500 off or lease as low as $399 a month. $7,500 off the new BZ or 0% financing for 72 months. We've got a Toyota for you at Dan Cava Toyota World in Fairmont. Shop the world.
Welcome back to State of Minds, presented by Hope Gas and by Greer Industries. You believe there is a reasonable way forward that would satisfy all sides? Is that even possible?
That's my goal. My goal is to work collaboratively. I've done it in every job I've ever had, is to sit down and say, okay, who all is involved? Who are the stakeholders? And we can all benefit. We're not all going to agree, but we can all benefit by sitting down together and bringing our different perspectives. And the project and the process can be improved by including everyone in the conversation.
Can it be done when there is, not in my backyard? I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean,
sure.
I'm not sure. Look, I'm for economic growth in West Virginia. I'm not sure I would want one come in and be next to me. I bet a lot of people feel that way. But you feel that way. You might not want next to your house.
I will tell you right now, there is actually a data center within. It's not a hyperscale data center, but there's one in South Charleston I live less than 2 miles from. Didn't know it. I mean, I would never know it. Certainly, I think I'm the first to acknowledge that there's areas where they're not going to make sense, right? And there's areas that they will make complete sense. And so, as far as the not in my backyard, there are people who I think have legitimate reasons for that and concerns about that. And I think there's a lot of folks in the Eastern Panhandle, especially, that have that feeling. And a lot of them have come from
what happened in a public meeting.
Yes.
Went for like 5 hours.
Yeah. I actually volunteered to go to that meeting and was told that they would prefer to have their own meeting. If I wanted to have a meeting, I could have one later. So I wanted to go and present information, and I'm happy to do that. I'm actually going back over next week. I think that's important. But I think what you see there is a lot of folks have looked at Data Center Alley and Loudon and said, we don't want that. And I think that's a reasonable position to have. I do think that they also would love to have the $1 billion a year of revenue that Loudoun County has in their budgets straight from data centers, because they have the best schools and they have the best parks and they have all these great things. But I think it's fair to say we don't want that. And so one of the first things I did, I was had a meeting with the Jefferson County Development Authority, and I met Buddy Reiser, who's Loudoun County's, he's referred to by the Wall Street Journal as the godfather of Data Center Alley. He he's the me of Loudoun County, but for 15 or 20 years. And I asked him, can you share your plan? Can you share your comprehensive plan of what you did and why you did it and the mistakes that you made and the things you've learned and what you'd have done differently? And so that's another thing that this office wants to create is a comprehensive plan. We want to say, okay, what is ideal for West Virginia? Do we want 5 data centers strategically located? Do we want 50? I don't know. But I think that we can come up with a comprehensive plan, especially if we bring that advisory council together and we really think through it with a number of people that have, differing perspectives and different experience and different education. I think we all would, as long as you have people that come to the table that sincerely come with a desire to do what's best for West Virginia, I think that we can all work together to come up with a process where not everyone's going to be happy. That's never the case, but where I think that the majority of folks can see that we can do this in a way that makes sense and that can benefit our state.
Why are you doing this? You didn't have to do this.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. I was asked to take this job.
I mean, did you lose a bet? I mean,
it's funny. I was asked to take this job and I actually politely declined and gave them some names of people who probably would have done a better job than me. And then I was asked again and I said, well, let me think about it. Again, I went over and looked at some hyperscale facilities. I talked to my kids. I talked to other folks. I asked the same question I ask anytime I take a job, which is the outcome good and can I be successful? And so one of my daughters actually said to me, Dad, I don't think you should take this job. I mean, data centers, I saw on TikTok, every time I do a search, it's a gallon of water going down the drain. And I said, well, first of all, TikTok's in a data center. And I said, if you really want to start thinking about how data centers touch our lives, I think that's an important thing that gets lost. On the way here, I was on the phone. People watch Metro News TV, data center. I pay my bills online. I stream my TV. I stream, movies. I Venmo my money to my kids. They were like, oh, well, we didn't know that was in a data center. So, how we take our classes, how we have our healthcare provided, it impacts data. There's more data that was generated in the last 4 years than the history of the world before those 4 years. We're going to continue to generate immense amounts of data. We're going to have data centers. Society is not going to walk back from that. And so my thought was, well, if we're going to have them, rather than power the ones, export our power to Northern Virginia and let them have the $1 billion a year of revenue, can we put them here in locations? And again, I think that's the question that a lot of people skip over is, let's figure out where we put them, not whether we should have them, because we're going to have them somewhere in the United States. I honestly, I saw in the first time I read the bill, which was after it passed, and I saw this, we're in this AI race with China. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I read that, I thought it was just political. We're going to put that in for a political cover. Until I went to Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and one of their PhD guys said, we're losing the AI race with China. And I said, that's really a thing. And he said, oh yeah, it's real. And so again, I think we're going to have these. Can we do them responsibly and actually keep some revenue in the state of West Virginia instead of just piping our power out and letting everybody else have the wealth that's generated from this industry? I don't look at these as projects as companies coming in and taking anything from our state. I look at responsible companies that are going to come in and invest, not just the upfront capital in the project, but are they going to come here and be part of our community? And so when I go, and I've gone for the projects that have been approved, I go to their sites. I'm going to go look at their site, see if it makes sense. I want to look at where they've done their projects and see how they're received in the community. And those are the kind of companies that we want to come here and invest in our communities, invest in our state. And I recognize that, and I think this is an important conversation to have. I recognize that people are going to look and say, oh, the data center guy said data centers are good. And we can't trust that guy. I understand that. That is not what I think my job is. My job is to say, data centers are going to exist in the world. Can West Virginia improve and by having them here? And I believe the answer is yes, or I wouldn't have taken this job. You're right, 100%. My life was really pretty much great. And I willingly took this on and said, I think that we can do this. That could really help the state. I'm tired of seeing people and hearing people say, I hope my kids can have a job. I hope someone will come here and invest. I hope we could have nice things when we go to Columbus to shop. My daughters want to go to Easton. I saw this as, instead of saying I hope, I saw this as the governor and the legislature saying, here's a plan. Is it the end all be all? Is it going to solve every problem? I'm not saying it will, but can it be part of what we do? Can it really lift up communities? 100% yes. And so that's why I took this on. And it's been more challenging than I anticipated.
Chris Morris, thank you.
Yeah.